This session shall be recorded. Thank you. Welcome, Roger, to our Lunch and Learn session. We're very excited to have you here. We've got accountants and bookkeepers from across Australia here to learn all about LightYear. So can we maybe just give us a brief overview of what LightYear does and the problems that it solves?
Yeah, thanks and hello everyone. So LightYear is in the accounts payable space, and I'll distinguish that from being the expense management space or the receipt scanning space. Totally different things. LightYear is in the space where your client or the business has a relationship with their supply chain. Hospitality, retail, construction, businesses that have a continual set of bills coming in from a pretty steady supplier set. LightYear basically does data extraction, approvals workflow, and then other bells and whistles to remove that pain point for that sort of business.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And while Roger is talking through this session, I do encourage you to connect with people in the chat area, maybe share with people what lunch you're eating and enjoying at the moment. What's your favorite lunch there, Roger?
I'm partial to a little bit of lemon linguine.
Well, there you go.
There you go. And I enjoy a nap after it. I'll be honest. Carbs at lunch don't work for me.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So next thing I'd like to ask you is, where does LightYear work well?
Probably a couple of different types of clients. So one of the ones I sort of alluded to before, construction, hospitality, retail, things like that, where there's almost like an 80-20 principle in place. So in hospitality, for example, 80% of your bills are going to come from 20 suppliers, okay? So you're continually going to get the same sort of bills coming in, and those bills coming into an organization will generally require the same person within the organization to approve those supplier bills: chefs, food bills, beverage manager, beverage bills, retail manager, etc. So one of the things that we'll touch on with LightYear is we get line item data extraction line by line from every bill, and we get it in real time, and we'll touch upon the secret sauce later. So we're not just saying this bill from this supplier is owed this amount on this date. We're actually going down to product code, description, quantity, unit price. That really granular detail then makes it really appealing for people who need that detail. Retail stores need to update their stock systems. Hospitality, construction, manufacturing, those sort of guys want to know how much of each individual product they bought and whether they were overcharged for it. So that's the main sort of pain point we're solving for. Lots of bills. I want all the data, and I want certain people to approve certain bills, et cetera, et cetera.
So if I have an agreement in place with a potential supplier, do I put that information in LightYear and it will highlight if the prices have come through differently?
Yeah, exactly right. So LightYear will, two ways to do it. You go to your supplier and go, give me my agreed pricing, and you just upload that into LightYear, and LightYear has a little match the columns widget. And it basically says this product, this price, this date range, coded in a certain way, forget about this sort of tolerance, et cetera, et cetera. Alternatively, LightYear creates your price book for you. So what you can say to your supplier when you start using LightYear is, hey, just send me a copy of every bill in for the last 3 months. LightYear in real time basically creates your product book from all of the products you purchased. You can just trash all those bills, obviously. You've probably got them into Xero or whatever system you're using. And then you can basically just add your pricing. So there's a number of ways to get the pricing in, but it is literally as simple as that. Then we flag to you any overcharge.
So a massive time saver, especially around any anomalies or incorrect pricing coming through, which is always frustrating to find out at the end of the year rather than at the start of the problem.
Yeah, indeed. So
where is LightYear not ideal for? What situations shouldn't we be using it for?
The clients to eliminate. If you've got a client who's literally out and about, ad hoc receipts, buying, sort of shooting from the hip sort of thing, I mean, it works if it's just really that client. Maybe it's a one man. We've a lot of tradies using it, right? And the majority of their stuff is coming in from the, let's say, Bunnings or whatever, and they're buying lots of bills like that. But if it's about expense management, receipt capture, if it's purely that, I mean, we have receipt capture, so I'm not saying that it doesn't work, but it's not the sweet spot for LightYear. You've got Xero, sort of that receipt capture sort of thing inside of Xero, does its job, right? Receipt bank or whatever it's called now, does its job. It wasn't a dig. I was just literally
no, that's fine.
But yeah, it's not the sweet spot for LightYear. LightYear is got a sweet spot, and that's sort of on the periphery.
Yeah, it's always really important to know that sweet spot so we don't sort of over-engineer something. So we always like to ask that question. And sometimes people from the outside go, well, why are you using three solutions that seem kind of similar? And it's like, well, they are kind of similar, but they are strong in some features and areas. And as you said, construction, hospitality, and retail, where you need the granular detail. And when you're going for 80% of the 80% of the invoices coming through are from 20% of your suppliers. So I'm interested to know, what does LightYear integrate with?
Well, we can actually integrate with anything. So I'll park that for the moment. But in terms of API connectivity, we obviously have QuickBooks, MyOb, Xero, NetSuite. We have a lot of sort of bespoke third-party integrations. So let's say we do half of the McDonald's network in Australia. So we basically do the API connection into the McDonald's software. With education software that we do, fuel distribution software, that's all API. But around about a quarter of all bills exported from LightYear go to a software that we just internally refer to as other. The client simply says, my software is another that is not on your pre-configured list. And then there's an export widget that allows them to define their own export. So we can get it into, bespoke versions of Sage 300, SAP, Infor systems, all of these old legacy big ERP systems. We just get the data whatever format they need, ingest it into that system. And similarly for inventory systems, because LightYear sends data to two streams. We can send data into your ERP, but then we can send the same data or a subset or a cohort of that data into an inventory manufacturing other system. And again, you can define that format and get it in.
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing that you're just getting it into so many different solutions there. And in terms of the flow between, say, if we just do something simple, Unleashed and Xero, is it touching Unleashed first, or is it touching Xero first, or is it simultaneous?
It's really up to you. And so Unleashed is an example of, so we don't currently get it into Unleashed elegantly, because purchases in Unleashed need to be instigated in Unleashed currently. Okay. So you've got to raise a purchase order and then basically receipt that. Okay. So there's not a way for us to basically throw a bill onto Unleashed and tell Unleashed to ignore the fact there's no PO, just update the inventory, right? Most systems actually go and they split. You basically say all of my bills are going into Xero, for instance, but some of my bills and some of the data from some of my bills needs to go into third-party systems. Some people, though, just send it all into Xero and then grab what they need from Xero. But most sort of set it up to basically have double export.
Okay, that's interesting.
So it doesn't have to be one before the other. It's whatever suits the client.
Yeah, excellent. What does a typical app stack look like? Do you have conceptually what an app stack looks like? You've mentioned construction, hospitality, retail. Is it, if there's someone's using one solution, would they typically benefit from using your solution?
Yes, and there's not a typical one because we're across so many different sectors, I suppose. So if I was to say hospitality, early learning, and aged care, okay, those are all just hospitality clients, right? An aged care facility is the same 200 people turn up every day as a hospitality venue. They just don't go home at night, right? So those guys have a pretty consistent app stack. You've got sort of KeyPay doing the sort of engine in that sort of sector really well. You've got Deputy and things like that doing the rostering and things like that. But when we spill out into, fuel service sectors, construction, you know, we've a lot of software development companies. There's not necessarily a standard app stack. Whatever works for them works for them. But certainly, maybe across 60% of our base, there would be that traditional, you know, let's get your rostering done, let's get your purchasing done, and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. What details are pushed into your accounting solution?
As little or as much as you want.
Okay.
So if we take, let's say you're taking a bill in for a product, it's a retail bill, it's like product code, description, quantities, unit prices, colors, things like that. You can choose to extract from that bill as much as you want. Okay. And you might need all of that line by line information to update your inventory system, right? But when you get that into Xero, you might actually just want us to summarize, you know, the bill. You know, these rows were a combination of this tracking category, this tax rate, and this GL code, and we will then summarize those and send a skinny set into Xero. Or you can choose to send the whole lot into Xero if you want, you know, that really granular sort of, here's all my products in Xero. So again, you define what you want your recipient system to receive. And that will always be based on an equal set or a smaller set of what we extract from the bill.
Yeah. So the source of truth could remain in LightYear, or it could be in the accounting solution, depending on where you want it.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we've always sent we send a hyperlink of the bill into Xero with every single data extraction. You can also choose to send the PDF as an attachment. You know, if it's more than 10 meg, Xero won't take it in, so we just get the hyperlink in. But more and more people are sending just skinny versions of the data in Xero and then clicking on the hyperlink to come back to the source document as their source of truth. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Are you ready to show us how to set up? Give us an overview of setup. Can you do that?
Oh yeah, that won't take too long.
Okay, awesome. So while I let Roger focus on showing us a demonstration of the setup, if people have any questions, can you pop them into the chat area so we can start filtering them through? But you take over the screen, Roger, when you need to, when you're ready.
All right. Now, Heather, how do I do that? Share screen. There it is. Big button at the bottom. Right. Okay. So if you guys can tell me.
We can see it.
Okay. All right. So when you register for a LightYear account, okay, this is sort of what your blank LightYear account will look like. I have registered Joe's Plumbing Canada at lightyear.cloud. So this would be the Carrington Hotel at lightyear.cloud, whatever you want. The registration just takes a second. Ignore the fact that this says there are 2 bills in there. Obviously, there would not be 2 bills in your account when you register. But the process for getting an account up and running is stepping through these little 10 steps on the right-hand side. Really straightforward. You know, each step has got a little sort of video telling you what to do. And then there's actually a step-by-step guide. So you connect your accounting system. Great. Tick that box. Tell us what your default tax codes are. So if we detect a row on a bill as taxable, which do you want your default tax code to be and non-taxable? Send a document into LightYear. You do that by emailing it in, uploading it, or using the mobile app. Once you get it in, you basically, LightYear will automatically present to you the data it thinks you may want to have extracted from the bill. And that will look something like, no, nothing there. Let me just I'll just jump into one of the hospitality venues because of the live data in here. LightYear would basically present to you the data that it believes you might wish to extract from the bill or the document that you have put in. Okay. Once you've done that, jumping back to Joe's, you basically you can set up your customization, and that's, you know, how many approvers do you want? Set up your individual approval rules, departmentalize your company, and by that I mean you may want only certain people to see certain bills, so you create departments. That's a really straightforward process. Invite the rest of your team. Tell your suppliers what to do. That's templated, pre-templated communication for you to send to your supply chain. And to clarify, all we're saying to the supplier is just send us your PDF, right? There's nothing fancy. LightYear has proprietary tech that basically takes supplier PDFs, breaks them open, and reads the metadata in real time. And that's how we get the real-time 100% accuracy, because we're not trying to interpret what the surface of the bill looks like. We're not sort of saying, is that an I? Is it a small L? Is it a 1? We're actually reading the metadata inside the document, and that's how we get the line-by-line stuff. But first LightYear account, this process will take you 25 minutes. Once you've done it once, you're talking registering an account to having it set up to exporting in less than 10 minutes, and that's the entire account set up.
Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. The screen and the layout is stunning. It's very visually easy to use. If anyone does have any questions as we go through that, please pop them in the chat area. People have popped that it's sounding more amazing than it did previously. And the new features these guys keep coming up with are so good, definitely ahead of the curve. So that's the,
we do try. Light years ahead of the curve. You see what I did there?
There you go. You'll have to brand that one.
Yeah. I think someone got it before us, but let's keep going.
So is there anything else that you could demonstrate to us as we're going through this? Because it's really quite straightforward in conceptually, I guess, what people are going to see. But is there anything people who are watching would like to see Roger demonstrate while he's got this screen opened?
Well, whilst people are coming up with a question, I'll maybe show you what we pivoted to and what we developed when COVID hit last year. Because, this is obviously, you've got an approvals workflow of the process of, these bills with these data having been extracted require approval by someone. And then it goes to the bookkeeper and the accountant for their review. They say it's all right and they sign it off, et cetera, and then it goes to zero. Great. COVID hits, it's like the world ends. So what we ended up doing last year, firstly, we created, just hitting this little help article, and I'll just, we basically created what we call Tinder for Bills. I would not know what Tinder is, obviously, like most people on this call. But basically, there's all of the approvals on the bills can be done via the mobile app. Sort of task management, approval, editing of, whatever, writing notes and things like that. So you don't have to get to a screen or a computer. You can do it all, or the client can do it all on the mobile app. But then you have the ability here as well to basically click that little avatar and assign the bill to whoever you want to actually approve it. You can actually send it to people outside of the LightYear network for their contribution to the bill. They can add notes, approve it, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can actually tag people. So basically I can say, hey, Jason, what's the story? Jason's mobile phone will go bing bong. He'll see the bill, see my question, respond in real time. So basically we always had the data extraction. We always had the approvals workflow stuff, but this was the big pivot that we did last year to basically get instant messaging and mobile approvals right through the app, which connects you to your client in real time. And all correspondence to do with the bill, the approvals, the notes, anything like that, lives on the activity thread behind the bill for the regulatory period as well.
Does the messaging them onto their mobile app, does that cost anything additional?
No, we're not greedy people. You can have that for free.
Very good. Someone has asked about the statement checker functionality.
Ooh, very nice. Right, okay. So LightYear recognizes a bill for a bill and a credit note is a credit note, but we also recognize a statement for what it is. So you just saw in real time there what's happening. So basically this is the statement section, and this is LightYear is basically automatically reconciling all my supplier statements. So basically you'll see here, this is the statement. LightYear is basically extracting all of the data on the left-hand side. And then LightYear is searching itself and making sure that you have all of the supplier bills. If you do, LightYear gives you a green tick, so you don't even have to go into the statement. LightYear basically at month end is telling you every single document that a supplier claims to have sent you is somewhere in LightYear. Now, let's say one was missing. I'll just unmatch that one. You just literally click email supplier statement and click send. LightYear will email the supplier to their accounts receivable department, listing any documents that might be missing, asking them to send a copy. When that copy comes in, LightYear obviously sends it to the person whose job it is to approve it, and then automatically reconciles your statement for you as well.
Excellent.
Like all this time you're going to have at month end now. Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Joy, you've asked a question. You're welcome to jump on, take yourself off mute and ask it if you want to. Otherwise, I'll ask it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that because I was just about to put a second half to the question.
Go for it, Joy.
Okay, so what inventory platforms do you integrate with? Because I know, as you mentioned with Unleashed, some of the other inventory platforms like Vend and that, you have the same problem where you've got to raise the purchase order in within the system. And the second half of the question is the inventory systems it does integrate with, does it update your supplier costs for your purchases?
Well, two parts of the question. I'll maybe answer the second one first. That's dependent on the recipient system. So something like BPOS, you can configure BPOS to say, if LightYear tells me that this is my unit cost on this purchase, give me the option to overwrite my agreed pricing. If, oh yeah, this is my new pricing, I just will update it now. Or basically it'll just continue to keep your existing pricing in BPOS. Most systems, that's configurable on the recipient's end. In with the other systems, like you mentioned, sort of, let's say Lightspeed, Vend, Unleashed and things like that. I'll draw your attention just over here to the purchase order module, which is in beta. Now I'll sort of pivot. We've just we launched this purchase order module in November, and it's coming out of beta in April. What follows then is not just the ability for LightYear for you to generate purchase orders in LightYear, which we've got a whole purchase order module, approvals, workflow, things like that, which then leads to automatic line-by-line three-way matching on a bill. But what we'll then do is basically, okay, well, you're raising a purchase order on Unleashed. We'll just connect to Unleashed. We'll bring back the Unleashed purchase orders into LightYear. Bill will come into LightYear, allowing you to do automatic matching in LightYear, and we'll update Unleashed's PO. Okay. As
goods received.
Yeah, and then there's going to be a little bit of, I suppose, configurability and individuality on those systems. But exactly right. We're not saying you have to generate a PO in LightYear. If you're generating it in NetSuite, Unleashed, whatever, we'll bring them in, hold it here, do all the reconciliation for you here, and receive it in that system for you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for asking your question, Joy. I've had another question from Kim, and she says, I assume it's also going to identify duplicates?
Oh, it does indeed. Let's see. If it...
you don't...
Anyway, yes, there's a double red icon here. So flags a duplicate. We don't charge you for duplicates. That would just be greedy. You just click on the red icon. It will bring you to both duplicates, and you'll see one has perhaps been exported, one has been, just received. Just trash the one that's been received. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Tanya, Tanya would like to ask a question. Would you like to take yourself off mute, Tanya, and ask your question?
Thank you, Heather. Roger, sorry, I was so famished. I think I was concentrating on my sandwich at one stage.
I missed.
I'm sorry. I missed the bit, I think, where if an invoice comes in and in the building construction, we have multiple projects, jobs, and then stages within those jobs.
Yeah.
Is there a section within the invoice when you're coding it, if an invoice belongs to multi-projects, but we can do it line by line?
Yeah, I'll just go into Hinchcliffe House here because this is 0, and I've got that turned on.
And apologies if you did show this before.
No, not at all. So basically, imagine it doesn't really matter. 2 providors, right? Again, GL codes have come back from 0, tax detection, whether it's taxable or non-taxable, we would detect that. But then you would have, for instance, perhaps 2 columns for your 2 tracking categories, and you can basically just code it in whichever way you want to those.
Brilliant, thank you.
No problem. And that works for jobs and everything in MyOb and all of your stuff in NetSuite as well. It's not just, Xero-centric.
Great question, Tanya. Thank you for showcasing that, Roger. Alfred, you've asked the question. Would you like to come off mute and show your video and ask the question? Yeah. Alfred's joining us, I think, from Malaysia, aren't you, Alfred? Is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, Alfred.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Heather, and also hi, Roger. My question is actually just now I saw that additional questions now. So it's actually looking at, you can actually connect to the tracking category. How about the zero project feature? So this is the first question. Second question is more towards wish to understand how the approval works, because zero has the limitation on the approval things. So some of our customers actually requested, is there any more complex kind of approval process? So yeah, wish to understand from you. Thanks.
Thank you. Projects won't be until the 3rd quarter of this year. We're starting to look at that both in. So I think the first thing we're going to do is to allow you to basically bring back into a LightYear the customer that it relates to. So if you've got a bill in here, you can actually tag it to the customer in the accounting system, which will then allow you to on charge. So that's the first thing. Projects will be happening, I believe, in Q3, but I'll take that on sort of notice and confirm that to you. In terms of the flexibility on the approvals workflow, so there's a number of ways you can do this. Firstly, you can departmentalize approvals. So how that works is, for instance, you create as many departments in your organization that suits your organization. Let's say this is kitchen goods. You basically list here all of your suppliers that supply kitchen goods. You just move the suppliers in and out. And you give your staff members visibility on the department and a job to do for those bills. Okay, so what that narrows it down to is, for instance, chef will only see food bills, doesn't get to see anything else in the organization. We've got dollar approvals coming, I believe, this quarter coming, which basically will allow you to say, if this is over a certain dollar value, send it on to my GM before sending it to accounts and things like that. And then you can actually get really granular and say, hey, forget everything we've told you about directing, bills from Andrew's Meats to the kitchen department. If anywhere on the bill in Andrew's Meats, you see the word food truck, you can send it to the food truck manager and code it in a certain way. And we can do that because obviously we're reading the metadata of the document, which means that we've got 100% confidence on the string of characters we're extracting. Therefore, we can give you confidence to actually route the bill in a certain way to certain people. Once that approvals workflow happens in LightYear, we then give you the option to drop it into Xero as a pre-approved bill ready for payment, or requiring another level of approval if you really want to tie your shoelaces twice.
All right,
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yep. And regarding pricing, I think you will explain it later, right?
Pricing? Oh, yes, we'll touch on pricing later on, of course.
Yeah, sure. All right, I'll just keep quiet. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you for joining us, Alfred. We've had a question. How does LightYear handle different bills from different addresses from the same supplier? For example, rates, power, telephone, and they're issued on the same date.
Yes, no problem. So you would use I'll jump to Carrington and just show you exactly how you use that. So basically, go into my supplier management. You basically use the keyword functionality that I've just alluded to there. So let's imagine it's 3 Hooks Seafood, right? I can't imagine why you would want to route different fish to different places. But basically, if I go to, sorry, I need to go to a different account. That's okay. You would basically say, apologies, just need to find it. Okay, you would say, okay, if anywhere on the document from Acoustic Dynamics, you see 33 Young Street, and that might be the address of, this department, or, a location or something like that, code it in a certain way, send it to a certain GL code, send it to this person. Okay, so you can have multiple bills coming in from the same supplier, and based on keywords that we extract from the bill, we can route it in certain directions. So we've got a national gym franchise. There's 87 gyms in Australia. They all run through one LightYear account running into SAP. Each gym, let's say Alsco, who provides linen to all of the gyms, you basically, under the Alsco supplier, you say 33 Young Street, code it in a certain way, and send it to the manager of 33 Young Street for their approval.
So with those 87 gyms, are they running under one ABN number or multiple ABN
Multiple
numbers?
ABNs, but they want it, because they're all sort of franchised, they wanted it basically, it's running into SAP. So every aspect of SAP basically has an allocation and then its own subset of GLs. So you can have multiple ABNs running under one instance of SAP.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because that's always the question from people in the groups. Can we run the solution for multiple businesses?
Yeah, so with Xero, for instance, we would really recommend that you don't have one LightYear account going to multiple Xero files, because you'll have to keep reconnecting, resyncing to your heart's content. There's a way whereby in LightYear we can create let's say, a parent-child structure for you. So if you have, let's say, a small retail group or hospitality group, you create a parent and then your child accounts, and each LightYear account connects to the Xero file in particular, and we then group your billing, etc., on your behalf.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. Kim, you've asked a question. Would you like to take yourself off mute and join us and ask that question? Kim? If not. No, not. I'll ask the question on behalf of Kim. Thank you for joining us. Are you able to split line items against multiple tracking categories?
Yes. So basically, if we've obviously extracted 2 rows of information from the bill, this bill we've extracted 1 row plus the freight charge from the footer, giving you 2 rows. You can basically assign each of them to whatever tracking category you want. If you wanted, for instance, though, the freight to be split, you can add a line and then just basically copy, the contents down and split it that way and adjust the individual totals. But yeah, that's why we always say, try and get as much data out of the bill as you can, because we can do more with it. We can price check it all for you and allow you more flexibility on the coding and the tracking categories. BU as a tracking category here. But yes, you can obviously create as many rows as you want if you wanted to embellish it.
Yeah. The price checking is just a phenomenal feature. Just know that for some businesses, it probably save them enough money to pay for the solution itself.
Oh, and beyond that, yeah, it's crazy the amount of overcharging in certain sectors. Obviously, all accidental, of course. But yeah, it's as simple as that. It's a traffic light system flagging to you if you've been overcharged, undercharged, or the correct pricing. And then you can just literally email the supplier directly back from LightYear and tell them to wind their neck in, give me a credit note.
Yeah, a lot easier to do that in a timely basis than when a big check happens at the end of the year or when you realize your cash flow is having issues. Are there any other questions from people who've attended? If not, Alfred did ask about pricing. So I'm not sure what you want to, how you want to go into that. I know Alfred's in Malaysia, whether you want to touch on that or get people to contact you.
It's really straightforward. We're very open, very, honest. It's the good Irish upbringing. Anyway, pricing page, go to your area in question. You will be rest of the world, young Alfred. And basically, but let's say you're in Australia, it's all based on the number of credits. So you need basically a credit when you export a bill or export a credit note. Doesn't matter if it's 20 pages long. If you export a document, you will consume a credit. If you enjoy the automatic statement reconciliation, you will consume a credit. And if you raise a purchase order, you will consume a credit. And you basically say, okay, well, how many credits do me or my clients collectively need through a period? And let's say it was something like 600. You would opt in for the 500 credit plan at this price. And you would opt in for a thing called overage, which means every month you go over the 500 credits you've already purchased, we allow you to go into debt, you continue to export, and at the end of the month, we'll bill you your 100 credit overage at the same per credit price as the credits that were in your plan. So you never have to buy a plan that's too big and lose all of these unused credits. You just buy the plan, err on the side of small, opt in for overage, and you'll always just then basically pay exactly for the number of credits that you consume.
Excellent. Any questions around that? Anyone? Emma, you've asked a question. Would you like to jump on, take yourself off mute and ask that question?
So hi, how you going? So
Good.
I joined in later, so I was just happy to finish something urgent. So Roger, I just wanted to know with this product, what target, how many accounts payable items would a client need for this to be worthwhile, like a minimum? Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you the worst case example for us in LightYear. We've got a distributor who probably processes around about 7,000 or 8,000 line items over the course of the month and does it over about 60 bills. So we basically, it's like 100 rows per bill. So it's probably less about the number of documents, but rather, I suppose, the number of touch points or items within those documents that you need to do something with. Okay.
Right.
So like our biggest client, a single client exports something like around about 8,500 bills a month. Our smallest is, let's say, a small franchise doing, 20 or 30 bills a month. Some people, it's more important to them to get a couple of hours back on a Saturday morning to play soccer with their kids, as opposed to the, couple of hours that they're saving. It's more about time as opposed to, the overall cost saving. We have a bucket load of trust accounts that maybe get one bill a month. And if you're set up under a parent-child structure in LightYear and the trust account is like a bill a month and it's a child, it'll simply use the credits that the parent's plan has, right? So you're only ever going to spend like 70 cents a month for one bill a month. That's what it's going to be if you're under a parent-child structure. Obviously, bigger organizations, lots of bills, this not only saves on the data entry and storage and all of that sort of stuff, but it just streamlines and it gives clarity in the organization as to where bills are flowing. So there's probably a saving there in terms of peace of mind, as opposed to just a saving in terms of data entry. So different for different people.
Mm. Yeah, it's always a hard one to get your head around, but good question, good answer. Thank you very much for that, both Emma and Roger. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask Roger to share how can our partners connect with you? How can they get in contact with you? How can they find out more about LightYear?
Well, here we go. So here's the crazy thing about LightYear. We actually have telephones and we will answer the phone if you pick up the phone, right?
What are these things you speak of?
I know, right? So here we go. You come to the website and then you work out how you want to interact with us folk. LightYear.cloud is the website. Firstly, live chat. So you'll have live chat. Basically, the Australian team look after us daylight hours. And then when we go off for a little bit of rest at home in the evening, the UK team take over. So you've basically got 24-hour support 5 days a week. So you can do it that way, live chat. And if the live chat isn't available, you can just leave a ticket and we'll get back to you. Or you can pick up the phone, basically under the contact us section or all of our details, also down the bottom of the screen. Obviously, follow us on the social. We are in accounts payable, so naturally we are really interesting. So that's another good way to reach out to us. But yeah, website, chat, telephone number, tell us what you'd like to know, and we're here. We came from hospitality. We're a subservient little business. We're here to give you the information you need. We're not here to drag you kicking and screaming into the restaurant and put a menu in front of your noses.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Roger, for sharing your fabulous solution with us and answering all of our questions. If there's no other questions, no, we've got nothing else coming through. Really appreciate your time today. Really enjoyed learning about LightYear and what it can do for different sorts of industries, and really give people back some of that finite time in their life so they can go to those soccer games and watch those kids play.
That's it. Well, thanks, Heather. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.